Good day, chess fans of online lessons. Today we'll see Qc2 Nimzo. That's the modern approach to facing Nimzo defense, and it's been played by players such as Kasparov and Carlsen. So it's a major continuation which relieves us of pressure to face all the many options when we play knight f3, going towards Queen's Indian possibilities, Ragozin, all those many opening systems that we could actually avoid by playing one of the Nimzo systems. And Qc2 is really at the prime of its existence, and as you study the classical ideas and the new energetic modern options, you realize that through playing Qc2 Nimzo, you actually get to increase your positional understanding. I started with the system only recently, and may possibly use it in the upcoming US Chess Championship. And it's interesting that a lot of times in order to improve, you got to try something new and attempt some kind of a new style. To me, the purely positional chess is going to be an interesting experience to immerse myself into. Now, Qc2 certainly has some dynamic play, and here's the outline of the DVD that you guys see in front of you. So this is the little introduction. It's going to be for just a couple minutes, and then you can see that from minute 3 to minute 49, we're going to examine move 4, c5, the positional approach for white. Then we're going to see ideas of Carlsen using the g4, kind of like the one that we mentioned or looked at in semi-Slav defense. Now, after that, we're going to see some theory of move 4 c5, which Nimzo actually played for black as well, and c5 I explored quite deeply. That's why I got quite a bit of material here on the topic. So afterwards, we're going to see the move 5 knight f3 that Carlsen reinvented for white in the Qc2 systems. You're going to see some b5 gambit systems. We're going to learn how Gareev uses Qc2 to beat a lot of his grandmaster level opponents. Then modern ideas are powerful lines that are used nowadays extensively, and so on and so forth. So you guys enjoy the DVD, and good luck in your tournament games playing Qc2 Nimzo. Thank you. Hello guys, today we're going to take a look at Qc2 Nimzo. So it starts the following ways: d4, knight f6, c4, e6. And at this point we're going to pick knight c3, and black is going to play bishop b4. So first let's summarize a few ideas we've learned by now. Well, if you guys looked at the previous DVD as part of the series, we took a look at g6, after knight c3 followed by d5, which is going to be Grunfeld, and we came up with an attacking line involving h4. Then in the second part, we took a look at the Slav variation, which goes d5, and we figured how to play against the semi-Slav, which covers another big block of knowledge that's required for us to be successful, gaining advantage in playing d4. So this is a few attacking lines that we mastered and cover a lot of the opening repertoire. Now, this kind of way to play for black is very common nowadays, since now knight f3 has been mostly dominant for white, or I guess a slightly more popular option. So Now, if you opt for Queen's Indian, playing knight f3 on move 3, then certainly black could play Queen's Indian, playing b6, which at this point g3 would be the most common idea. And now there's bishop b7, bishop a6. I certainly like these positions, both actually for black and white. I have a pretty amazing record here with black, winning most of the games that I've played. And certainly I understand this position for white pretty good. Now, the challenge is, so Queen's Indian is one possibility. Then black can also play d5 in this position. And the difference is here knight is already on f3 compared to Queen's Gambit. And at this point, if you play a natural knight c3, then black has a few possibilities. One is d takes c, which after e4, bishop comes to b4, bishop g5, and c5 leads to Vienna variation, which is a massive opening to master. Then the second thing is bishop b4 in this position, which leads to Ragozin. And actually today it's white hasn't proved any particular ideal way to deal with Ragozin, and black is doing pretty good. So considering how many things you got to learn compared to playing knight c3 in this position, it makes more sense to actually limit black's options. So after knight c3, black no longer has a Queen's Indian possibilities with b6, because you can just play e4 right here. And after d5, since the knight is on c3 rather than there's the knight on f3, white can just go ahead and take on d5. At this point, knight d5 is certainly not principled, because after e4, white takes over the center. After e takes d, we get a pretty standard opening position, which is a Cambridge spring. And after bishop g5, c6, we're going to play queen c2, preventing the bishop coming from f to f5. Now bishop e7, we're going to play e3, get the bishop out to d3, and the trick is to have the idea knight ge2, since we haven't put the knight on f3 quite yet. So at this point, this has been commonly known to give white advantage, or at least comfortable play. One more thing that I forgot to mention is actually after knight f3, black has another possibility, which is bishop b4. So this is just about the fourth idea that is possible for black. And nowadays bishop b4, say knight bd2, castle, a3, bishop e7, and after e4, for example, there's lines with d5 where it's only possible to find the advantage. At the same time, black has the idea of d6, pushing for e5, which I actually faced against the Grandmaster Perlstein, playing with white, and generally I figure didn't really manage to get much for white. So quite a few options, which makes more sense to actually play in a more principled way with knight c3. And at this point, black's really best possibility is to go ahead and play bishop b4. And now entering the territory of Nimzo, we have quite a few options, and once again the most principled one would be queen c2, I guess, followed by e3, which would be another popular move. But in this DVD series, we're gonna focus on queen c2 idea, which was dominantly played by Kasparov as the variation was starting out, and got to be pretty popular. So let's go ahead and start with this game, Aronian versus Karpov, which is right in front of us. And the way it caught my attention is I was actually solving a tactical puzzle, and saw that this was actually played in this legendary game. So here in this position, after queen goes to c2, black has several options. One is d5. That's one of the more principled lines. And I have a nice little novelty approach to facing d5, which I discovered only a couple days ago. Then another possibility for black is to play c5. Now we got castle possibility and some other smaller options as well. So let's go ahead and start with the game move c5. At this point, white doesn't try to hold on to the center. If you notice, queen goes to c2 and it's no longer connected to the pawn on d4. So at this point, playing some move like e3 is actually counterproductive, and white could get a worse position after e takes d, d5, and now it looks like we're going to get an isolated pawn, but the queen on c2 is not particularly useful. It could be useful for the attack, but it's certainly not the most essential move to play early on in isolated pawn situations. So at this point, whenever black tries to play c5, we actually just likely to go ahead and take the pawn on c5. So the advantage of having the queen on c2 now is obviously to defend the knight on c3, and generally in Nimzo that was a good point to make, that after queen c2 we defending the c3 so that black doesn't get the standard play with the, let's say, knight f3, or let's do a move like a3. Bishop captures, pawn takes, let's say b6, let's say we get the knight out, and this would be a standard, typical way for black to start going after the pawn on c4 and get all the forces lined up against the pawn on c4, having this two weaknesses. So this is the core idea of Nimzo, which we managed to avoid to a certain degree by playing queen c2. So let's go ahead and continue with the game. c5, d takes c, bishop captures, knight comes out to f3, and black castles. Now the main line we're going to consider here for white is actually starts with the move a3 in this position. And in this game, white played a more energetic looking one, bishop g5, just getting the bishop out straight away. So that makes a lot of sense. Bishop goes to e7, unpinning the knight and getting kind of a hedgehog, getting ready to set up for a hedgehog position, which you're going to play d6, a6, knight coming to d7 instead of c6. Bishop goes to b7, which is not blocked by the knight on c6, importantly so. So at this point, rook d1 is very useful. That's one of the advantages of playing a move like queen c2, so that the rook has an open space right here on the along the d file. So now black plays h6, hitting the bishop. The bishop retreats. Now one interesting resource to keep in mind is a move like h4 that we're probably going to see at one point or another. So now the idea would be that if pawn takes bishop, we take with a pawn, and now the knight cannot move because we're going to go for the checkmate right here. So at this point, black probably be better off playing g6 so as not to get checkmated. So g takes f, bishop takes f6, and at this point doesn't look like black struggles too much. I guess we can continue e4, try to get the queen out to the queen side potentially, but certainly this is just a fine spot for black. But an interesting resource that could make things happen. Now, on the other hand, if black just doesn't take on g5, then we're just kind of hanging on here with h4, which is not going to be particularly useful, especially considering that the rook went to d1 and we don't have the possibility of long castle. Bishop h4, pretty nice and natural. And at this point, white could either pick e3 or e4, which e4 is certainly better looking, about to create creating a threat of about to be playing e5 right here in the middle. So bishop develops, and the white continues bishop e2. I guess e5 is tempting, but the bishop opens up in this case. Let's see if bishop can take here on f3. Well, doesn't seem like this would be a very good idea, because now if bishop takes d1, hitting the queen, we're gonna take the piece on the e7, and at this point we're gonna be winning some material right there. So I guess bishop f3 is not going to be possible, but after knight h5, black is gaining some squares out here. Bishop takes e7, queen takes, f3 is hanging now. If bishop e2, this is going to be highly unpleasant. Knight coming towards f4. So we're going to play knight e4, but at this point black also has some checks out here. So this is not an ideal scenario for a push in the center. So Aronian just develops the bishop, and black plays a6. So right about now you start considering e5, but Aronian still decides against that and just goes ahead and castles. So at this point the black is struggling a little bit, because as we mentioned, the knight wants to go towards d7 square, which is more natural, but then as soon as black plays d6, e5 just comes out as a winner here, gaining some significant initiative, and that's kind of how the game developed later on. After knight c6, though, the bishop on b7 is blocked, so this is not an ideal scenario certainly. So knight goes to e8. Karpov is still trying to get his pieces aligned with the hedgehog possibilities, but certainly at this point you guys can take a moment to see what the best move is. Certainly to retreat the bishop out to g3. Black continues d6. At this point, black kind of ran out of options because the pieces are miscoordinated. The standard spot for the queen and hedgehog is to place it right there on c7. Now the bishop is taking care of it. And when you have when you're struggling with the space, which certainly white has more space and the better piece placement, you wanna certainly exchange pieces to make things easier, which Karpov tried to do, playing knight e8, but that didn't work out too well, because now bishop just retreats, and as black tries to unpin a little bit to get some forces out, since knight c6 runs into, well, queen d2, I guess now at this point d6 could be played. I guess e5 is still a possibility. D takes e. Now we could exchange, pick up on the pawn on e5. It would be interesting to see how this position would be evaluated. I guess at this point we've been likely to play queen e3 and put a little pressure here on e5, so still black's position is critical. So black will play d6, and now we are very happy with the move e5. So easy to see that white's pieces are all well aligned and attacking, and black has a very unfortunate queen side right here. Queen c7 is necessary to get the queen out of the pin. At this point, Aronian played e takes d, which loses some of the advantage. So ideal move was to play queen d3 at this point. D takes e, knight takes e5 with the threat of knight g6. After bishop d6, I'm gonna play knight g4, hitting the bishop on d6. If bishop takes g3, we're actually going to take with the queen, interestingly enough. Queen takes, and now we're going to take with f-pawn. So that's a pretty extravagant right here. What is the point? Well, the point is the knight is pinned. It's hard for the knight to come out. Let's say knight c7. At this point we're going to play rook d6. So all of the black's forces are in slightly misfortunate positions. Rook goes to d7, we could play. We could play bishop f3 right here. And a bunch of black's pieces are actually tied up. So now Aronian plays a simpler, e takes d. And I guess the better option for black was to take bishop d6. Now, the problem with this though is that rook is going to take on d6, knight takes d6, rook comes to d1, rook d8. So the good intention of trying to trade a piece actually backfires, because now we're going to get 2 pieces for the rook with a winning position. So at this point, knight takes d6, and we're going to double the rooks. Rook d3 might have been a little more precise. So at this point, Karpov is certainly messing up. Knight c6 was nice and natural, at which point I guess Aronian was trying to get the rook out there, but it doesn't seem like it's particularly good for white. So here the best option is actually just to retreat back to d2. So after rook d4, the queen went to c6, and at this point Aronian plays another strong move. Since black wants to play knight f5, we gotta prevent that, and bishop d3 is an excellent idea. Now knight e5 is still in the air. So at this point, I guess Karpov was hoping to play knight d7, but a combination of things is possible. Either bishop d7, rook coming to d1, or bishop takes d6 first. And the problem, black has too much stuff hanging along the d file. As soon as you double up, it will be hard for black to resist the threats. For example, bishop takes d6, bishop takes d6. Now at this point, the idea of bishop e4 is going to be lethal. So knight e8, knight comes back. At this point, we're going to make a check. Maybe bishop e4 straight away is a slightly better idea, or I guess about the same. So we're going to make a check first. King retreats, bishop e4, queen goes to c8, and knight comes from a4, hitting the b6 critical square. So black has quite a few weaknesses and fewer pieces in the game to defend those. So bishop c5 is pretty natural. We're going to get rid of the bishop. And simple rook d2. So at this point, white's idea is certainly to bring the other rook into the game. If knight c6, we're going to get the rook in and then try to take over the file. At this point, if knight f6, we can go ahead and pick up the pawn on c5. So queen c8 certainly looks way too slow. I guess Karpov had the idea of bringing the rook through a7 to d7, but that wasn't going to happen because white is way too quick. So first bringing the bishop, then bringing the knight forward. At this point, I would expect black to play rook a7, but the problem with that is that bishop going to take on b8, queen takes b8, and now there's a fork, which I guess Karpov missed in his preparation for defense. So knight e5, king g8 is necessary, and at this point, killer idea here, killer tactics for white, and that's going to start with bishop e7. So the idea now is to bring the rook out to d8, and the problem for black, the knight on f6 is hanging, and white wants to open up the king side. So if rook e7 here, obviously white is going to play rook d8, winning the game. Black played queen c7. At this point, we're just going to get rid of the knight, bring the queen to e4 first, before moving our knight from e5. So the rook on a8 is hanging as the knight is hanging, and the problem for black cannot defend developing the knight, because the knight is controlling the c6 and way too many pieces are controlling d7. So Karpov prefers to keep the material, but now white has the overwhelming advantage having all these pieces in the game. So he plays knight g4, at which point if black defends with knight d7, that doesn't even make sense because after rook d7 the queen is vulnerable, plus knight f6 is intermediate fork right there. So black has to play king g7. At this point there's a couple weaknesses that white can emphasize, which starts with queen e3, hitting the pawn on h6. Rook has to defend, that's the only way to defend. h5 is not going to do it, because we're going to still bring the queen in, and followed by checkmate on f6. So queen e3, rook defends, and at this point an excellent move for white, distracting the rook on h8 from the defense of h6, and that's going to be rook coming in towards d8, defended by the rook on d1, and the idea being that if rook takes d8, queen takes h6, king retreats, and we play knight f6, checkmate. So after rook d8, Karpov is left with a few options. So for example, if queen e7, same thing happens, rook h8, queen comes into e3 and knight f6, winning the queen and winning the game. So after rook h8, rook d8, Karpov resigned, and this is an excellent win for Aronian. It's our first game in examining Qc2 Nimzo.
This is Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.